Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tennessee Fats, and today I'm doing the 5th in my series of Robert E. Howard's Battle Royales. Now these are fun videos for me because they give me a chance to take the content that I really like reading, which is original Robert E. Howard stories. And then what I do is I take two different comic adaptations of those stories that have been published over the last 50 years, and I compare and contrast them. At the end of the day, I'm going to tell you, of these two, this one's probably the better one as compared to the original Robert E. Howard story. That's the conclusion of each video. And the idea at the end of this is you as the viewing public will say to yourself, oh gee, I want to go read a story of, I don't know, Tower of the Elephant, like we're doing today. And you say, which one should I watch? Well, this video will be particularly apropos for you because today we are doing the Tower of the Elephant. Now some of you might remember in the last one, we took the original Marvel magazine version of that and we compared it to the Marvel comic book version of that. And the goal at the end of that was to say, this one's better than that. And we did that. We did actually do that in the last video, and we said that this one is definitely better than that one. So if you want to read a Robert E. Howard story that's actually the Tower of the Elephant, this is the one to go with of those two. But today, I've got my hands on the third comic adaptation of this, which is done by Dark Horse. And today we're going to compare the winner of the last battle with the Dark Horse stories. This is kind of exciting for me because I actually haven't in my head sat down and said, which one of these is the better of the two? As you know, I do these in a one take here. So we're going to sit down and we're actually going to go through this from beginning to end. And at the end of this, you're going to find out, is it this one or is it the Dark Horse version? Right now, I don't know. Instead of looking at me, let's get into it. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Now, I would be amiss, and this is where I always do the same thing, so we're going to do it again here, which is I'm going to do the obligatory YouTubing. So if you like Robert E. Howard content, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and add a comment. It does help a lot. I find it a lot of fun when you guys actually post comments, and I actually see them below, and I get to respond to them. It actually shows me that I'm not just throwing these out into a void, which is nice. So keep that up, everybody. Now, into the actual book. So, as I mentioned in the intro, the last time we did a Robert E. Howard one on this particular topic, we did this, the comic adaptation, and we compared it to the magazine version. Now, of the two, what I came to was I said, this is the better. So to give you guys a quick synopsis of what we talked about last time, so you don't have to watch the whole last video if you don't want to. Of the two, I said this comic version is very short. It's quite close to the original story, but the actual tale itself is really narrowed down to put it into the point where it would fit within basically the confines of the number of pages that are in a comic. It's good. I really like Barry Windsor Smith art. I'm heavily biased towards that. I recognize that. That's why I was objective as possible when I actually reviewed the two. And of these two, I said this is probably the one that's more true to the Robert E. Howard material. They were both very close to what the story was. This just had, quite frankly put, it was a battle of pages. This had more content. It covered the content more closely. The dialogue was closer. And I think the other thing that they did over here was they did a much better job of actually depicting what a body would look like after 300 years of being tortured. If you watched the last video, you'll notice that when I reviewed this, I said that the body of the elephant dude, who I won't name here, you can look it up yourselves later, quite frankly put, looked like he was a little fit, which was odd. That was a real standout for me. The other issue was that, quite frankly put, this had to be approved by the Comics Code Authority. This did not. So they had a much easier time blending the story into a version that didn't need to be heavily edited, as opposed to I know what Marvel was going through in this at the time just to get it on the rack. So definitely the winner last time. Now, I'm going to re-mention this, okay, as a public service announcement. If you're out there looking to buy this, do not be confused by this. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Tennessee Fats, how are these any different? Well, they're different, trust me. Put them side by side here. And what do you see? You see Savage Sword of Conan, number 24. And you see Conan Saga, number 36. I'm trying to save you guys a couple bucks here. This is not Tower of the Elephant. Conan Saga is reprints of the original Savage Sword of Conan stories. They reprinted the materials in them, and every once in a while what they did was they would take a really cool old cover and they would repurpose it, and it would get stuck on a new story. So this is Tower of the Elephant. This apparently is the Haunters of Castle Crimson. Not the same story, so keep an eye out for that. Don't get caught by this. If you see this and you go, oh my goodness, it's supposed to be Tower of the Elephant. It's not, okay? So don't do that. So there's my PSA for the day. So let's talk about this. Let's just do a quick recap of what I liked about this. Now, what I've done here is I've changed the camera angle a bit from the last one. What I found when I was reviewing the last one was the camera was just too far out and you really couldn't see what you're looking at. So I've moved us in a fair amount here, and I've given you guys a much closer view. So let's start with Tower of the Elephant, for those of you who don't know. The story of the Tower of the Elephant is really a story of a young Conan. And for the record, my Tower of the Elephant copy came out of this, okay? It's a story of young Conan who ends up heading into Zamora, the city of thieves, basically looking for adventure. They don't really talk about in the story how he ended up there. They just say he ended up there. He's in a bar at the beginning of the story, and he gets into a struggle with some other guy who's a loudmouth, who's bragging about, well, quite frankly, about kidnapping people. But then he mentions something that catches Conan's ear, which is, oh, the Tower of the Elephant. Well, Conan then gets involved in a conversation. The other individual is somewhat rude about it, and at the end of the day ends up dead in a bar fight. Big surprise there. Conan ends up getting out and going away, because guess what? The title of the book is Conan. It's not random dude in a bar. So he then heads off to the tower, where he's already kind of heard of the Tower of the Elephant. He's got his sights on the idea that he's going to steal something from the Tower of the Elephant, and he's heard of this thing called the Heart of the Elephant. He doesn't even know what it is, but he knows that as a thief, he wants it. He tries to break in. He meets another thief on the grounds. The two of them climb to the top of the tower instead of going through the front door, because there's guards on the ground floor. And when they get to the top of the tower, there's a trap. It's sprung. I won't spoil it for you here. We'll see it when we get to the comic. Other guy dies. Conan heads down the stairs, and this is one of the reasons why I really like this story. He runs into this poor, tortured alien who looks like an elephant, has the head of an elephant. Let's just call it that way. You'll see it when we get into the story. And takes pity on him. Where his first reaction was, oh my goodness, it's a monster. He then turns into, oh my goodness, this poor thing. And helps that particular monster to cast his final spell to basically escape and punish the person who's been torturing him for 300 years. At the end of the day, Conan leaves, doesn't take anything with him, and the tower crumbles in the background. Literally, the last page of this 20-some-odd page story is that Conan, when he looks back, sees the tower crashing down. That's it. Short story. I really like this one for the character growth. I really like it just because it's action. It's just nonstop action the whole way through. I think Robert E. Howard did a great job on this. This is one of my favorite stories by him. So I think you've heard me say it enough times now. Great, I'm biased. Let's move on now. So, getting into the magazine. This was the winner from last time. Some of the key points that came out of this were, I like the art. I like that it was on point. And I like the fact that it rung true to the story. So let's go through this page by page to show you guys what we're looking at here. All right, so yeah, you get a nice splash page. This is my reader copy, by the way. Here is Conan wandering through the city. He heads into the bar. And there's the loudmouth right here. And they get into their fight. The candle's blown out. And at the end of the day, guy is dead. I'm kind of skimming through this particular version because, as I said, we've already gone through this version. If you really want to see page by page, go back to the last video where you'll see a little more detail. Conan then makes his way to the tower, goes over the fence in the tower because he's just on the spur of the moment. Hey, I'm going to go break into it right now. And while he's there, he runs into this other guy who is also a thief. This is the dude I mentioned. And this is the one thing where I thought the story was slightly off. And I know they were trying to do it, but I don't think they really got it down pat. One of the things that's in the original Robert E. Howard book is that this thief is, and the word I used in the last video was rotund. He has some mass to him. Robert E. Howard purposely was trying to juxtapose the size of the guy versus how lithe he was in the story, and made points of it in the written story, which aren't here. You'll see this guy does not look like he is rotund. He looks like he's all beef like Conan. I don't know. I found that a bit off. I don't know why they were off on that point, considering they were so on everything else. But that's one detractor from this story. You then have them run into the lions, who are a problem, and they gas the lions, kill the lions, and they get to the point where they're going to get into the tower. Now, this is an interesting depiction of the tower. This does not match what's in the comics. This really looks like a large minaret at the top of it, which is covered in jewels, which isn't in the books. In the comics and the description of the story, it's basically a straight tower with a lot of jewels on the top, which was depicted in the comic version of this that Marvel did. But either way, you know, listen, artistic license, I'll give it to you. They climb up the tower at the, oh, here's the other main point. This is a big one. where one lion survives and heads out and sneaks up on them, and somehow Conan turns and kills it with his sword. I don't understand, and I've said this in the last video, I'm going to say it again here, I don't understand how somebody turning around with a sword can kill a lion. Lions are massive. I just don't get it. Conan, the way this is depicted and told, to me it says that he's got to be at least like 8 feet tall just to have the mass to pull off a move like that. But another kind of key point on this was the silence of the lions throughout the rest of the story. The lions they ran to initially that gasped didn't make a sound. This lion, again, when it attacked, didn't make a sound, and they made a point of this of why didn't it roar as it charged. That's a key point, and that really draws back to almost a line-by-line version of what comes out of the story, or the written story. So I can really see that they're trying to stick close to this one. They get up to the top of the tower. His friend heads into the tower and comes out dead. I'm not going to ruin it for you because I'm going to go to the next page and you're going to see what happens. He gets in there and there's your depiction of the tower top. This actually is a key point. The actual description in the story of what this room looked like, which they spent a lot of time on in the written version, versus what's sitting here. This is very close with the chests and the 3 sofas, or divans, or whatever you want to call them. We won't call them Chesterfields here for our American colleagues, but that's what they are. So it's interesting that this is bang on, and I really like that point when I was reviewing this initially. I like the fact that they really hit it. Well, what was in the room is a spider. It is a giant spider. Conan and the spider have a battle, and quite frankly put, they're both too fast for the other one. And they start playing this game where Conan figures out, okay, the minute I get hit by one of these webs, I'm done for, because I'm not going to be able to cut through it in time. The spider is really smart, actually. Look at the size of its brain. Or 1,000 eyes, I don't know. But I'm guessing there's a brain in there. It actually just figures I'm going to actually catch him to the point where he falls with my webs, just by jumping around and shooting random webs around, which Conan's been trying to avoid. Well, he does actually catch him. Catches him in the foot. Conan drops his sword. And then at the end of the day, the spider ends up getting crushed by a chest. Now, this is really a petty point, but it is a point. In the written story, the spider is climbing down the wall, and Conan throws the chest and crushes it against the wall. In here, the spider's on the ground. He crushes it with the chest on the ground. Physics of that's a little different. Really petty, but it is a difference. Now, you get into when he runs into basically Elephant Guy. Comes wandering down the stairs after he gets out, doesn't touch anything upstairs because he knows he has to go get this heart of the elephant. And there's Elephant Dude. Now, what I liked in this was the depiction of the elephant versus the way they depicted him in the comics. And I made that comment already. In the comics, he looked like he was rather fit. Here, you're seeing a withered body. It still looks to be in okay shape to me. It's not like, completely broken. His hand looks a little broken here. But he's not that destroyed. Conan's really taken aback by this because initially he thinks it's a statue. And then goes, holy crap, this thing is alive when it starts to move. And he starts to take pity on it. This is the character growth I was talking about, and I really appreciated the fact that they threw this in here. Because seeing Conan, or a younger version of Conan, learning and growing to me is always a valuable thing. I like seeing that. Then you get the origins of the Elephant Dude and how he comes to the planet. They're basically rebels, actually, that tried to overthrow their own planet that got exiled to Earth. So they're not without blame, all right? Let's just put it that way. Now, who knows? Maybe the guy who was running their planet was a real lot of dick. Who knows? Maybe it was warranted. Anyways, end of the day, all of his people die with age. He ends up being the last one left, and he gets trapped by this sorcerer who was, at that point in time, his apprentice. And he basically tortures him for 300 years to make this highly magical elephant do all of his magic, basically grunt work for him. So the elephant then turns around and says, listen, I need you to do me a favor. I want to get out of here. I want to kill this dude. Kill me, and that'll be part of my final spell. And then go and put this stone down in front of Yara, who is the sorcerer, and then I'll be able to get out. And this is the point where Conan really takes it, and he's like, oh, I'm going from, having a conversation, I'm taking pity, and you can really see it. I'm sorry, this really shows me, all right, I'm feeling sorry for this. This is not a happy face. Now, who would be happy when you're digging around for a heart and a corpse? I don't know, but this is also a look of, I'm really having a hard time with this. Anyways, end of the day, he heads downstairs. He does squeeze the heart. There's the heart. Squeezes the heart, blood into the stone, activates the spell, heads downstairs to Yara, where all he has to do is just go downstairs and say exactly what the elephant told him to say, which is put it down in front of him and tell him this is my final gift. And Yara tries to fight it, but basically ends up shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and is drawn to the stone. At the end of the day, runs around it 3 times, jumps on it, and then gets absorbed into it. I don't know what the symbol of the 3 times is, but it happens. Okay, that's what happens. And inside the stone is where you have giant elephant dude in original format with wings right there, wreaking his vengeance on him. And at the end of the day, Conan's like, ooh, I probably shouldn't be here anymore. This is not a good idea. And he says, I am hightailing it out of here, which he does. And downstairs, there's the guards that were on the ground floor that he couldn't pass the first time, which is why he climbed up the outside. And as he leaves, he looks back and sees the tower crumble. Good story, fairly accurate. I liked it. That's basically your story there. This is my reader copy. Let's toss it to the side here. Now, let's get into the Dark Horse ones. Now, Dark Horse has this covered in 3 issues. And I'll bring these over here for you. Issue 20, issue 21, and issue 22. All right, so there's your 3 stories that make up this. Now, what I did on this one, because this is part of an ongoing series that Dark Horse had, was I said, you know, I'm going to pick up the issue just before it, just in case. Just in case there's some sort of lead into this, because you never know, like when he's in Zamora, it's never really spoken to in the original story of why he's in Zamora. I thought, well, let's get in here, because again, it's the story of young Conan. What happens here? Well, if you're picking up these 3 issues, which are the ones that are listed as being the entirety of the Temple of the Elephant, you want to read this issue. You want issue 19. I'm not going to open this up and go through this in detail because it's not part of the actual story we're reviewing today, but I am going to say to you, if you want to know why he's there, this is an excellent sort of prequel lead into why he's there. It doesn't get to the point as to why he's, you know, so keen on attacking the Tower of the Elephant, but it does get to the point of, this is why I'm in the city, this is my issue, and this is what I'm going for. So let's go through this. So start off with, it's 3 stories, 3 separate comics. That gives you a lot more pages than what Marvel was working with when their original comic, but it also gives you a pretty equivalent number of pages to what you get in a magazine. A little bit more, actually. So, issue 20. Let's start with that. We'll begin at the beginning. These Dark Horse comics are color. That's really nice. I like that. The other thing I like about them is they give you a little synopsis right here of where you are in the story. That is phenomenally useful, because if you pick up any other of the Dark Horse stories because you're trying to read some of the Conan, Robert E. Howard stories, having this here is nice. It talks to the city of Zamora. It talks to us, you know, the Den of Thieves. Here's the bar. It's in color. And one of the things that I found in this particular story was they really built this bar story. They didn't stick to the shortened synopsis that was written in Robert E. Howard's original story. They really built this out. And I think part of the reason why they would have done this is they were trying to build context as to maybe justifying Conan's whole killing of this mouthy guy that's at the bar that he ends up killing. Maybe you're trying to downplay the barbarism of Conan. I'm not entirely sure. But they built it for some reason. Make this guy seem like more of a bad guy, and people don't really miss when he's killed. This part here, you know, you mock me and then you lay hands on me, that's directly to the story. A lot of the dialogue in here is directly to the story, but pieces of it are really built up. I like the fact that they spread it over many pages. It's nice because you actually see the art and the progression of how people are moving in the story. And then at the end of the day, well, you have an ad. At the end of the day, the candle goes out, everybody runs out, and here's the comment: the barbarian, even the dark, he unerringly. This was a real point that Robert E. Howard was making, was that these civilized people couldn't grasp the fact that a barbarian could kill somebody in the dark. And he could. Anyways, he leaves, his tunic is torn, he tears it off. And he goes wandering through the city in how we normally see Conan, with his little slippers and his loincloth. And he heads towards the Tower of the Elephant. And there it is. This is the depiction I was mentioning earlier, where I said normally you see it as a straight tower with a bunch of jewels on the top. Conan is reminiscing about Yara, about how powerful he is. And here's a story again, and Marvel did this with the comic version, but not the magazine version, where they added a small vignette in, so you could really see how evil Yara is. And in this particular instance, Prince makes fun of him, Yara turns him into a spider and steps on him. In the Marvel comic version, I keep pointing over here because that's where it is. I'll show you, this is what I'm actually talking about, the Marvel comic version. He ended up just berating some poor guard, which was just weird. Anyways, Conan goes up over the wall, heads into it, and finds a body, which was something he was supposed to do. The body's been strangled. It was very silent. Conan was even taken by surprise by it, and then he runs into, ba-boom, the other dude that I mentioned. Now, this is a rotund dude. Remember earlier I said how Robert E. Howard wanted to juxtapose, litheness versus size. This dude is not all toit and toit like a twiga, like Conan is. This is not a skinny dude. This is the Prince of Thieves that was originally included in this, that was originally intended. 2 points for Dark Horse for that one. Bang on. If you're creating something where you're sticking close to the story, that's it. And this is where we transition then into the next issue. Well, let's go to the next issue, shall we? That was issue 20. 21. Ba-boom. All right. And the two of them are saying, okay, let's work together. Again, juxtaposing size, juxtaposing difference. Nice little write-up up here. So if you did pick this up and miss the first issue, you could pick up where we are on the story. And the two of them say, hey, let's go and work together. And they do. You have them working their way through the garden, really building up on the sense of suspense that Robert E. Howard created and going through the garden, basically through continuous panels where really nothing's happening. And then you get to the point where lions. Yes, there are lions over there. Those are the guards that everybody was terrified of, that nobody could name. And they come along, they're coming out, and they gas them. Actually, it was interesting. I'm not somebody that's real cool on cruelty to animals. I don't like that at all, all right? I've had pets my entire life. I grew up around farms. I was surrounded by farmyard animals. Like, I do not appreciate cruelty to animals. And this, with the whole gassing of an entire pride of lions, it's funny, when I read the story, I was like, nah, because it's not really in your face. It's not like, oh, here's a depiction of it. The comic books kind of do it sort of off panel. The magazine kind of does it off panel, and then you've got this, and you're like, oh, these poor things, especially with their eyes being drawn open. You're like, that sucks. Like, I really felt for that. Granted, it's in line with the story, but I don't know. Maybe this is the way we think now and how it differs from 100 years ago when Robert E. Howard was writing this. Anyways, they get to the point where they're going to climb up in the tower, and boom, Conan turns around and stabby, kills one. Oh, he gets it through the head here. There's your question of how, so it's a fluke. He just managed to get it through oh my goodness, it went right through his nose. Poor thing. Anyways, wait, if it went through his nose, that wouldn't have killed his brain. It wouldn't have touched his brain. I don't know if that, all right. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of why this would or would not work. I am not a lion biologist specialist. So we're just going to stop that, and we're just going to assume that this worked. No, still not entirely cool with that. But I believe in here they do it again. Yes. Why didn't the cursed beast roar as it charged? That line keeps coming up. I think the point that they're trying to make here is these lions have been magically altered so they don't roar. I believe that's it. I believe that's why it continues to come up time and time again. So anyways, they get to the top. This is nice because it actually shows Conan looking back on the jewels and saying, why don't we just steal these? Which was a very valid point in the written story, which was kind of missed in the other magazines. The Prince of Thieves goes in and comes out and he's dead. And that's the end of him. So that's pretty close to the story. Again, covering several pages. I like the fact that we're getting this in continuous art. We get into the room. Well, there's our three divans or sofas or Chesterfields. And there's our chest on the floor. Very good depiction of the room. What's off is this floor does not look mirrored to me. And in the written story, I'm remembering this being described as mirrored, because that was how Conan he sees a shadow here going over him. And that was the point in it. It's like, oh, there's a shadow going over him. He sees the flicker in the floor. But a shadow in a room that's lit unevenly, I don't get that. I've always assumed that was mirrored. So, different interpretation. And he takes a little split of the stuff on his back. He doesn't like it. There's the spider. This spider doesn't have a giant brain like the other one did. And he starts his battle with the spider as they try to basically loop one another, and the spider tries to stop him from going to the door. Same logic is going in here. And again, you're seeing the room with the sofas, the three of them, very close, and it hooks his ankle. And it's coming down the wall and smush. He smushes it on the wall. On the wall, smush. Nicely done. That's what I call sticking to the story. And then after that, he says, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to head down the stairs. Nicely done. Story 2, done. Story 3. Nice close-up on the cover. There's our written story again, if we need to catch up. And Conan is heading down the stairs, and he smells something coming out front of the door. There's the smoke. He heads in. Now this. Yeah. Let's just juxtapose this for a minute here. Okay? Go back to our elephant dude in here, and this is me flipping through. Here we go. Here's elephant dude here. Okay. There he is. There he is. Okay, he's sitting upright. Yeah, okay. 300 years of being on the rack and being tortured, and he's sitting upright. Okay, all right. I'm not explicitly saying anything, but this looks like a dude who spent 300 years on the rack. This is not a body in good shape. This is looking rather rough. Good job there. That I think is a much more accurate depiction of what he was shooting for. And there's some even more to it. You can see the scarring, the marking on him, and Conan really, he's starting to take it. He's really starting to take this in, and he's saying, "Oh man, I feel so sorry for you, dude. This sucks." As the elephant is telling him his tale, and it's building a little more into that character development I mentioned earlier. And then you get a nice little vignette in the middle here where the art style changes, and it's the story of our elephant dude coming to the planet and basically being here for the rise of mankind, while all of his peers die off just because of old age, and then him being captured and being tortured, and being forced to build all this magical stuff for Europe. I'm like, okay. Conan is now feeling sorry for him, and not off panel, on panel, give me that heart. We're going to go through this process. I am going to kill you. I'm not happy about it. And this is rather gross. And bleeds it into the stone and goes downstairs, and Yara awakened exactly as he was supposed to say. There's the stone. And you see Yara starting to be drawn into it, shrinking down, falling into the stone. And at the end of the day, falling into the stone, literally into the stone, where he is then chased by Elephant Dude and tortured. And Conan's like, because the stone disappears. Conan's thinking, I better get out of here. Now, this is an interesting thing. As a thief who had broken in here specifically to get stuff, why would you have not grabbed some of the other stuff lying around? I don't know. Maybe he just didn't want anything to do with it. But he heads out, dead soldiers, heads past the garden, and he looks back, sees the whole thing crumbling. But this is an interesting ad. You can actually see Elephant Dude flying off at this point in time. That was not in the story. That is nowhere in our written story. But I tell you, as somebody who has read the story multiple times now, and if you're going to ad-lib and add a little more, because they already did, they added to the story a little bit here saying this is why he's in town. That was very nicely done. It gives you that little piece that says, now I know that everything's okay. He did get away. And he did actually survive this whole mess. Because as he says in the written story, he says, death for my people is different than it is for yours. So, that's this one. All right? We've now given you a synopsis on the comics. There's the magazine. Now, the hard question here is, which one of these is the better? Well, okay. Let's start with simplicity here. Art-wise, which do I think is better? Well, I will always say that a written colored comic is much easier on the eyes than a black and white magazine. That being said, I do like the art that was in this. I've always enjoyed the art that was in the original black and white covering. The art in this is good, though, and I like it. And I like the fact that they really, especially the way they depicted Elephant Dude, all right? That was really well done. I think that these guys nailed it. The detail and the shift in the art style that they did in that third issue there, where they're saying, from the Elephant Dude's point of view, this is my story and this is my telling of your history. That I thought was really well done. So art-wise, I'm pretty close on these, but I am going to give it to this, saying this is the better of the two because quite frankly put, it got Elephant Dude right. Done. Writing-wise, well, it's a Robert E. Howard story. This whole review is to tell you which one is closer to the Robert E. Howard writing. So really what you're looking here is, instead of writing, you're looking at a comic adaptation-wise sort of writing, like where's the dialogue and what have you. This one fell a little short for me in that bar fight. That, to me, just seemed to be a little bit drawn out. But the rest of it was bang on. This was 100% bang on the whole way through. So this, I would say, accuracy-wise, this one gets it. This one's a little bit off, especially that add-on where they threw it in the end where they said, well, we're going to ad-lib here, and here's Elephant Dude flying off at the end of the day. I like that effect, don't get me wrong, but it's still not going to be accurate to what Robert E. Howard was writing, because that's nowhere in the original story. So, writing-wise, this one is the better of the two. Overall, which one is closer to Robert E. Howard? This one. Which one is the better read? Oh, if you're going to read one story, I'm giving it to Dark Horse. I got it. As much as they ad-libbed, and as much as they added little vignettes in that weren't in the original Robert E. Howard story, I think what they did was very well done. I think their add-ins were nice. I think the parts where they were more accurate than the magazine made up for those add-ins. I think the prequel piece, which was this, why is he in Zamora? Well, that's an interesting question that's answered right away if you've read the prequel. It's that simple. The fact that you've got, you know, Elephant Dude flying off at the end, well, you knew at the end of the day that this was really the release and the getting away for that elephant guy. It's just visually depicting it. Is that analogous, or is that literally them saying, well, he flew off at the end of the day? I don't know. I don't know. But still, I'm going to give the Dark Horse. So I'd say Dark Horse wins this one just based on the fact that they had more pages, number one. And number two, they really stuck to it the whole way through. I think that the little, especially with our rotund Prince of Thieves, I think they were paying more attention. So all in all, after all three of them now, so let's just put them all out here. So for our conclusion, you got original comic version, you got magazine version, and you got new comic version by Dark Horse. Ooh, yeah, I am giving it to new version by Dark Horse, even over the magazine, which I find surprising. Typically, I always prefer magazines. That's it. So everybody, that's our conclusion on the Tower of the Elephant. We will not be doing any more of these now until, I guess, maybe Ablaze does a Tower of the Elephant version, which, you know, it might be done soon. Maybe when Conan's produced by Tower, maybe they'll do a Tower of the Elephant right up, because they're a tower. Tower. It might work. Who knows? Maybe we'll see that, and then we'll come back and revisit this. But for now, out of the only 3 versions that are out there that are available in comic format, I'm saying Dark Horse did the best job. Huh. Surprising. Cool. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you stuck through the end. For those of you who did stick through the end, thank you very much. You know, it's funny. People click through these videos based on what they see on the screen a fair amount. And if you've done that, that's fine. That's fine. But for those of you who stuck through and listened to all the rambling all the way through to hear the whole discussion, thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody, we will see you in the next video. Have yourself a great day.